Hello, my friends. This is Dr. Deepak Chopra again, and we are back discussing cutting edge science, cutting edge ideas, cutting edge anything that helps us access the future of well being. So, my very special guest today is Austin Katz, and I will just ask him a few questions and then we'll go from there. We shoot the breeze as usual. So first of all, Austin, thanks for joining me this morning. How are you?
Thank you for having me. Feeling pretty good today.
Okay.
When the weather is nice, I'm happy.
Great. Happy is the way to be. So I just saw some of your material that you had sent me on cannabis and all the interesting things that are happening in the world of cannabis and CBDs and so forth. But before we get there, I just want our audience, a lot of people are listening to this conversation, to know a little bit about your background. How old are you? Where did you grow up? And how do we happen to be together having this conversation? What brings you here now at this pivotal moment to talk about what we're going to talk about and the context, the background, the history. So tell us a little bit about your life.
Oh, absolutely. So I'm 32 years old. I live in Brooklyn and I grew up in Montclair, New Jersey, which is 10 miles outside of the city. So this has always really been home. But I did spend 5 years in Colorado where I got my undergrad. And while I was there for the last 3 years, because I did 5 years of school, I was growing medical cannabis. We were one of the early adopters and certificate holders back when it was kind of like the Wild West. You could buy cannabis from anywhere. There were caregiver statuses that allowed you to grow 6 plants that you could give to other people so they could grow plants for you. And so you could give your caregiver status to a dispensary and they would in turn give you cannabis and massages and acupuncture for free. So it was this extraordinary time to be a part of what was really the genesis of what is now becoming a very sophisticated industry. So I graduated and worked in tech for a little bit, really in content, and then eventually started my own business called Sheabrand with my 2 founders, Crystal and Marie. And it was really started in a basement, whipping up skincare products, lip balms, shea butters, and then testing it slowly on the market before eventually all being able to quit our jobs and pursue this full time. But what brings me here today is really related to not the beauty and skincare products, but to the cannabinoid-based products that have really represented, the most of our business and the chief focus of my life for the past 4 years. 5 years ago, my uncle was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. I already had this background in cannabis, and I was really motivated to get him to start using cannabinoid products to help, stave off pain, improve mobility, help with his tremors and his freezing, which was a wild amount of anecdotal evidence, and had him go watch videos on YouTube. And I dug extraordinarily deep in order to be able to articulate to him in a way that was both accurate and compelling.
So what got you initially interested in medical cannabis?
Well, I was in undergrad in Colorado, and we had the opportunity to get these licenses. So recreationally, people were smoking cannabis already. So it seemed like a convenient thing to do at the time. So it wasn't something that we started thinking that we were going to have a caregiver status so we could grow plants for other people. It kind of ended up in that direction. Once we realized we could give away our caregiver status, someone would give us their caregiver status, and then we would grow the cannabis for them. So it was almost a means of convenience that eventually turned into a passion.
So you mentioned your uncle with Parkinson's. Tell me what the outcome was.
So there's a lot of ways to integrate cannabinoid products into your life. There's not just one way to administer it into your body. There's not just one way to use it. There's actually 3 categories of CBD products. There's skincare, there's products meant to address pain, and then there are dietary health supplements. Generally, someone who experiences chronic pain would want to take advantage of, at the very least, pain products, definitely dietary health supplements. What you see is a reduction in freezes, which was his big issue.
A reduction in what?
Freezes. So
Yes.
tremors is a consistent Shaga freeze, carrying a pot across the kitchen, and all of a sudden that connection breaks. For him was the real danger. The other tool, so you really want to supplement your diet, which I can get into more why, but you really want to supplement your diet if you are someone who's struggling with chronic condition, especially associated with the nervous system, autoimmune diseases, pain, anxiety. It's important to supplement your diet with cannabinoids that come from plants. So that's the baseline for him. Make sure he has a rich amount of cannabinoids in his system that are available in order for his endocannabinoid system to operate optimally. And
Did
then
he benefit? Did he benefit?
certainly.
Yeah.
And we've been selling full spectrum CBD oils now for 3 years. And there's an incredible amount of people that reach out to us on a daily basis, talking about the profound effects these oils have had on their lives. My parents are entering their 70s, and we're in a very tender time period where the adoption of new consumers is really who stand to benefit a lot from these products, is predicated on education and explaining it to people in a way that will really destigmatize.
So as I look at the landscape of cannabis, cannabinoids, CBD, etc., one gets the impression, at least in the media, that cannabis is a panacea. And whenever something seems like a panacea, it seems too good to be true. And one wonders about the hype around whatever people are talking about. Can you share with us right now, what is the basis for cannabis's efficacy, whether it's a cannabinoid, whether it's CBD or marijuana? What is this underlying science behind that? I know you sent me some, but we'd like to expose our audience to that.
So absolutely. In order to understand how cannabis interacts with your body and your mind, you need to first understand the endocannabinoid system, the endogenous cannabinoid system, or what we'll refer to in this conversation as the ECS, just to keep it shorter. This is a major system, like your respiratory system and your nervous system. It was actually only discovered in 1992. And I think part of why it's so exciting right now is because a lot of what people have been saying about cannabinoids for years is now being validated through studies. So we're in this, pioneering time frame where we're starting to see a lot of new information come out that also is informing a lot of pharmacological decisions around what they're using their drugs, what they decide to target, which we can get into more later. So your endocannabinoid system, think about it this way. You go out on a run and you get hot, like too hot, and you need to cool down. So your body produces sweat in order to cool you down. The production of this sweat is the product of the endocannabinoid system. recognizing, hey, I need to cool down. So it engages your endocannabinoid system, engages what are called cannabinoids, which we'll get into, is including CBD and THC, to trigger various functions to cool you down. But sweat is one of them, right? In the same way, let's just say you're too cold. Your endocannabinoid system has functions that are designed to warm you up. So it's not like when you're administering cannabinoids into your system, it's not like a vitamin or a mineral where it's meant to do one thing, right? These are smart compounds that are identifying your needs and then coming up with solutions to those needs in a very sophisticated way. So yeah.
Your cannabinoids, you said the system, which means there are receptors to cannabinoids at a cellular level in the entire body. Is that what you're saying?
Right. So that now that we understand what the endocannabinoid system does, just to expand a little further, the fact that it can produce upticks and downticks is very important. People with Parkinson's disease, like my uncle, they suffer from, we think, a lack of dopamine to the brain. People with Tourette's syndrome suffer from an excess of dopamine to the brain. But cannabis helps both, right? Some people have too much oil in their skin. Some people's skin is not oily enough. Your endocannabinoid system is dedicated to finding that sweet spot where you are not too oily and you're not oily enough. And that is referred to as homeostasis. That is balance. And that is what the endocannabinoid system is dedicating to do. It's dedicating to achieve homeostasis, to bring your regulatory functions into balance.
So that's, I was hoping you were saying that that it's basically the system for homeostasis. And, you know, as a physician, we define homeostasis as a dynamic state of non-change in the midst of change. So, you know, whether it's body temperature or heart rate or blood pressure or anything else that we're talking about in the system, the endocrine system, the immune system, they're all self-regulating systems. And the end point is homeostasis, self-regulation, a state of dynamic non-change in the midst of change, like your blood pressure stays within a certain range, your blood sugar stays within a certain range, your hormones stay within a certain range, your sleep-wake cycles stay within a certain range. Anything that restores homeostasis would, I would say, be as close to a panacea as possible. And what you're saying is that the cannabinoid system is basically the fundamental homeostatic regulator. Like, you know, if you have a temperature regulator in my room, it regulates the temperature, whether it's hot or cold, it keeps it at 72 or within a certain range. That's what homeostasis is, self-regulation, dynamic non-change in the midst of change, but applied to everything: heart, stomach, immune, endocrine system. Am I summarizing this adequately?
Yes, and I've heard you talk about the autonomous nervous system, which this is going to be the core to, and it really is, it is all of the regulatory functions, as you mentioned. People can often have this perception that it is this wonder drug because we talk about it dealing with specific ailments. Oh, I hear it deals with inflammation, it helps with anxiety, it helps with sleep. So people get the idea, it must be an anti-anxiety medication, or it must be a sedative, right? If it's helping with sleep. It's actually that sleep and anxiety are two of the many functions controlled by your ECS. And if you don't have a strong ECS, you struggle to sleep and you struggle with anxiety, right? So that's the foundational way of looking at it in your bloodstream is when you're delivering cannabinoids into your bloodstream, it's more like eating your vegetables, right? If you don't eat your vegetables, you don't feel as good, you don't function as well, you don't retain information as easily. So as you age, especially, it's very important to supplement your diet with cannabinoids. And
Now, of
actually,
course, so a lot of people, young and old these days, are also using cannabis for basically recreation. And I have a question.
Mhm.
Have you, in your experience, or others who are looking at the research, have they seen any addiction with cannabis type, either THC, CBD, or any other cannabinoid? Because alcohol leads to addiction, cigarette smoking, these are recreational drugs. They all somehow lead to addiction. But I haven't seen much literature on this. I asked a friend recently, what happens if somebody's taken cannabinoids for many years, regularly, every day, and they suddenly stop? And he said it's like going off coffee. I'd like to hear your take on this.
Yeah, that's a great question. So again, I want to just cover cannabinoids really quickly because this will lead into the answer. Our body already produces cannabinoids. We're here talking about cannabis. Cannabinoids that come from plants, they're called phytocannabinoids. THC is one of those cannabinoids. But your body already produces cannabinoids, including a cannabinoid called anandamide.
Yes, I know.
Medically called anandamide, which is a Sanskrit term for
Ananda means bliss.
exactly bliss and ecstasy. This cannabinoid that your body produces already has very similar intoxicating effects to THC. It actually binds to the same receptors that THC does to do things like trigger dopamine to the brain, which is what happens when we go out on runs, right? There's a reason why runner's high doesn't last very long. But when you are experiencing it, it is because of this specific cannabinoid interacting with these receptors, the same receptors that THC interacts with. So that's just one endocannabinoid. And those they're really focused in concentrating on being deployed to your brain. And then there's CB2 receptors, or sorry, I'm not talking about receptors, I'm talking about cannabinoids. The second cannabinoid your body produces is most common, it's 2-AG. Both of these are endocannabinoids. So endocannabinoids are cannabinoids your body naturally produces. Endocannabinoids are most commonly found in breast milk and in babies. Young, vital, healthy people are rich in cannabinoids, uncoincidentally, right? The theory is that as you age, your body struggles to produce endocannabinoids, and thus your regulatory functions start to break down. So it becomes of increasing importance that you supplement your diet with cannabinoids that come from plants, which we're already used to doing, like with vitamins and minerals as well. So anandamide, for instance, is something that if you deliver into your system, or sorry, let me rephrase that. If your body's already producing enough endocannabinoids, you don't need to be supplementing your diet with CBD. You'll know because you're going to be able to sleep well. You'll feel good. Your regulatory functions will be working optimally. Sometimes children have signs of a deficiency, things like epilepsy. If they experience chronic pain, you see these as being appropriate times to give your kids CBD, but otherwise they don't really need it, right? So as you age, to your point about addiction, you're supplementing your diet with phytocannabinoids, and your body gets used to that. So that gets used to like receiving the supplement every day. So it doesn't feel the need to produce cannabinoids on its own as often. So if you have a friend who smokes a lot of weed and they stop for 2 days, or someone who takes CBD stops for a couple of days, it takes a couple of days to adjust because your body has to re-regulate its natural endocannabinoid flow. So yeah, it's a really good question in that regard.
And then the last bit I wanted to ask is, it's still, cannabis is still not legal in most states or some states. For example, it's not yet legal in New York. right? What's the future as far as regulation and legality is concerned? How do you guys manage to produce these products legally and reach the masses?
Yeah, it is very tricky. We used to have a lot more problems. There's basically no infrastructure for companies that want to sell CBD products, including like credit card merchants, really high insurance, banning from all sorts of retailers that just wouldn't accept us, which is why me developing language in order to train people was a huge part of us just landing accounts to try to draw that bridge between what people know it could be a huge potential, um, products for them, and actually buying it and understanding why it works. Um, so, I think once things legalize fully, which like in terms of cannabis, I hope that we see more regulation with respect to cannabinoid-based products, including what you're getting from dispensaries. I'm very pro-regulation. There's not a lot of regulation in general, like on your supplements really, or your cosmetics, right? Like Johnson and Johnson had like tested for positive for residual solvents in their baby oil that they had been selling for years. And I don't think that's right. So I think that our products that are hitting shelves should be under higher scrutiny. And I don't think CBD products are any different. So what I imagine will happen is it will become part of just like the free market. And
Right now, though, with your product line and your reach and your distribution, you feel that you're covered legally with what you're doing?
oh yeah, we operate within legal boundaries. There are some states that have their own laws around CBD, like North Dakota. We avoid those states altogether. But per 2018 Farm Bill, it's not even a controlled substance. The FDA was the one that said, hey, look, we tested this thing. It's not intoxicating, super safe, and you should sell it. And it was consumers who were like, whoa, this is very confusing. And there's all these snake oil salesmen out there, and we don't know what we're buying, and we're scared because there's a stigma. So that was kind of a push to like, hey, you regulate us and help us understand how to enter this as a consumer, this industry. But absolutely everything is done legally. And it's for that reason our products are represented in over 1,000 different stores across the country. We're in Whole Foods, as well as a lot of other national retailers as well. So definitely legal.
Wonderful to have this conversation with you. As a parting message, what would you like everyone who's listening to this conversation? Any words, last words? What can we look forward to in the future? And who is a candidate for cannabis and these products?
Yeah, absolutely. The last aspect to the endocannabinoid system were the receptors. Did you want me to go over receptors really quickly?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. So there's cannabinoids and then there's cannabinoid receptors. These are the core of the endocannabinoid system. We already talked about cannabinoids. Cannabinoid receptors are like the secret sauce though. I like to think about them as like little security cameras, like little security system that is scanning your system for health, determining the condition of the space outside of various cell walls in which they live, and then deploying cannabinoids in order to bring that atmosphere into homeostasis. So there are these receptors. They live on the inside of cell walls, skin cells, immunity cells, in the soft tissue, in your organs, in your brain. And like I said, they're kind of what do this. They're what do the signaling. There's no brain signaling involved in the endocannabinoid system. It's one of the amazing parts about it is the cannabinoid receptors are determining, hey, this area needs some help. And then it engages the ECS to deploy the cannabinoids, which go then interact directly with the receptors in order to bring into homeostasis. It's for this reason why you can use CBD on your skin, People ask me all the time, why is CBD good for skincare? Well, the dermal layer of your skin is lined with cannabinoid receptors. And one of the functions of the CBD in your skin, there's actually over 160 functions that it can affect just in your skin: elasticity, collagen, skin cell regeneration. This is why CBD products can heal wounds and expedite healing, is because of these cannabinoid receptors. The CBD interacts directly with it and brings down inflammation. Inflammation is largely the cause of a lot of our ailments. And if you deliver CBD into your bloodstream, you can sort of imagine it going through, calming the inflammation. Part of the reason, that's one of the things that are keeping you awake when you're struggling to sleep. So there's various types of receptors that are responsible for different things, and some of them are in your brain, and certain, like THC, certain parts of your brain will trigger intoxication, but other parts won't. And THC binds to both of them. So yes, it's we think about it as a intoxicating compound, but it's only really in certain areas. And that's more involved with like memory and thinking, cognitive function. Okay, so that was kind of, I didn't want to drag on about that.
What is the effect of cannabinoids on memory, cognitive function?
So one of the things that neuroscientists know a lot about is CBD as a neuroprotector.
As a neuro?
A neuroprotector.
Yes.
So not only does it help with bringing down inflammation in your nervous system and dealing with pain that might be all body or localized pain, but it actually improves neuropathic connectivity. It improves that restoration, right? And that's part of why people with Parkinson's benefit from it, is because it is restoring that connection and bringing into homeostasis what is normally very difficult to control. As you know, drugs that are traditionally used to engage to try to deal with nerve pain are not the most sophisticated, right? And they're a lot of the times kind of trying to jolt the system into, waking up and making connections. And a lot of the drugs like epilepsy and depression is a lot of the same things. So, it's much different when you have cannabinoid receptors lining your nervous system. They are on the very nerves on your nervous system that are responsible for that pain. So the cannabinoid will find the receptor responsible for that pain, that pain receptor, and bring down inflammation right there in the spot of the system. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Have cannabinoids or THC or any of the other CBD related products been used to treat addictions and addictive behavior?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've had the benefit of talking with pain doctors who understand how it helps with pain, but they don't know how much it helps with muscle recovery. I speak to sports scientists. They understand how it helps with muscle recovery, but they don't know much about how it helps with neuropathy or with chronic pain or with sleep. So I've been doing a lot of work to try to bring, the information together. I'm sorry, was that your question?
No, but it's related, but are they helpful in treating addictions or addictive behaviors?
Yeah, that was your question. Sorry about that, Deepak.
No problem.
Yes, CBD products are commonly used to help with both withdrawal, tempering the side effects of withdrawal, which it does for people going through chemotherapy as well. And it helps with staving off cravings as well. So it's used in multiple ways. And it also, it helps take the edge off a little bit, right? So if you are someone whose addiction is, limbic, it's motivated by maybe serotonin or something like that, the CBD can engage your endocannabinoid system to safely deliver serotonin to your brain.
Now, I've seen a little bit of literature on cancer. You mentioned cancer chemotherapy and decreased side effects, but there are people who are saying it helps actually in the treatment of cancer. Can you say a few words about that?
Yeah, it's funny you say that because as someone who sells CBD products, it's almost taboo to talk about the studies that have been done about cannabinoids and cancer. That's when people start saying, "Oh, this guy just thinks it's works for everything, and it's snake oil, and that's ridiculous." And in reality, there is a lot of evidence to show that cannabinoids can both inhibit and reverse the spread of cancer cells.
Okay.
Not only that, there are a lot of cannabinoids being used in staving off nausea, helping with reduce the metallic taste when receiving chemotherapy, helping with appetite, sleep, general pain. So it's very, very common. And it kind of has been, in a lot of ways. Smoking cannabis, even in the 70s, my mom worked at a hospital where they used to go around rolling joints for some of the patients. So people have kind of known a lot of these things for a while, but a lot of the studies, you're talking 2017, 2016, 2015. I mean, you've been talking about this in other language for decades. But with these new studies, I think now we have some more language to apply, which I think could be really beneficial. Yeah.
Austin Katz, it's been a pleasure and privilege to talk to you.
Yeah.
And I hope people will watch this and get a lot of good information and make their own choices, of course, always. But this was a very good, enlightening conversation. Thank you for joining me.